Welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission study session for Monday, March 28, 2022. I'd like to thank all the commissioners for your service tonight. And we'll start with study session item A1, discuss regular agenda items. That bumps us down to C1. The only regular agenda item is consider approval of the February 28, 2022 Planning and Zoning Commission minutes and take appropriate action. Does anyone have any comments, changes, etc. on the minutes? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to item A2, presentation and discussion related to allowing murals.
Thank you, Chairman Moore. Good evening, everyone. Shrupa Sen, Deputy Director of Planning. So tonight, the purpose of this presentation is we have been discussing murals, and there have been some interest over the years on considering murals. Recently, last week at the City Council meeting, I gave the same presentation and received direction from City Council. We wanted to update the Planning and Zoning Commission and kind of let them know where we are and what the next steps are going to be. So some of you might have seen this presentation before, exactly a year before actually. In March of last year, we had also discussed this. And at that time, the direction wasn't very clear. There were some confusion. So from that point, we are now at a better situation. We have some direction from council. We have some more work to do. But the overall content was where we are right now in terms of our murals. The case law situation with murals versus wall signs, their implications, what the complications are. There is a handout I just gave you all before the meeting. It's a very easy to read, very light material. However, it very effectively and succinctly gives you a synopsis of the complexities and where the ambiguities lie in terms of case law as well as the decisions over the years that has been made by courts. The proposed options, what we offered to City Council at last Tuesday meeting, that what can be some of the suggested solutions, some of the locational considerations, and the discussion or the direction we received. So the first one, as of right now, depending on how our sign code is written, murals are not allowed anywhere within the city. There was an effort to add murals as part of a station area code amendment process. However, that did not go through. It wasn't approved by City Council last year. The request to allow murals, the reason it did not go through last time was there were lack of size constraints, and there was some ambiguity in terms of who will be reviewing those applications, or if at all. And the other question raised was, well, we go to these other cities, there's so many cool artworks, they're doing this, why we can't do it at Farmers Branch? And also the discussion about federal case law and the compliance with the First Amendment freedom of speech rights. So a little bit about the case, and some of you might know this, the latest and greatest in terms of 2015, the federal case about Town of Gilbert versus Arizona versus Reed. In a nutshell, the focus of that case or the decision was, if you have to read a sign to regulate it, you're violating people's First Amendment rights. And that's a basis for striking down a sign code. And the complexities kind of start there, and it gets to be more and more and more complex. There are 3 levels of scrutiny that are applied when courts review sign ordinances and how they're applied by the municipality. Kind of starting with the very least restrictive or the rational basis, where the court says, okay, does the ordinance has a ground in terms of regulating wall signs or other type of signage? What they are considering, is it strictly based on size or location, traffic safety and aesthetics, versus the strict scrutiny, where is the most stringent scrutiny, and there is anecdotal way of saying if it applies the strict scrutiny, it's basically the death blow. Your ordinance is probably going to be struck down. where it says that if you have to, your signage have to be content neutral. If you have to read the sign, then it's violation of the First Amendment rights. Cities can still regulate signs, given the court decisions over the years. We can have dimensional controls, we can have placement controls, we can control the number of signs, off-premise versus on-premise. All these aspects we can still regulate. However, speaking of murals, given that murals lie in that ambiguous zone of wall sign versus artistic expression, there are quite a few city ordinances that exist today that might not be in compliance with the latest case law. So the option one that we presented to City Council last Tuesday was murals purely artistic in nature, no business content, no strict regulations, and it is going to be just a permit function, no City Council review or no board review. And this will meet the strict scrutiny standard of federal case law, which is it's someone's expression of art or their expression of free speech. We are not regulating anything in terms of that aspect. There are some cities within Texas as well as Oklahoma that have similar ordinances to allow this, like Georgetown or Oklahoma City. Option two was limited business content. And this is the one that in most cases you see to be most popular. For example, if a business is trying to promote their location or trying to commission a mural, it makes practical sense that they will try to include a portion of their business content, maybe their name, maybe their logo, to some extent as part of the mural. Otherwise, why spend so much money on that mural, so to speak? So the option two is allow murals, however, also allow limited business content. And that's where we can restrict the size of the business element of the mural, not touching the mural portion of it, but where you are putting, like, say, the Walgreens logo on the picture here, or if you have Starbucks and Starbucks logo there, for example. However, we have to be very careful in terms of not to circumvent our existing sign code, because our wall signs effectively provide you avenues or tools for marketing or advertising your business, your premises, and there are size limitations. So someone can, if we are not careful, effectively bypass the wall sign regulations and actually put up a much larger wall sign as part of their mural, and can also do more number of signs versus what is allowed under our sign code. So those are the things that we have to look at when we bring back in an ordinance format or when we bring back for council consideration. Also, we have to be careful in terms of no off-premise business advertisement to be allowed, because right now we do not allow off-premise business signage or off-premise signage. So just because someone is doing a mural on a particular building, if they want to advertise a business which is not located in that building or in that premise, because then that's off-premise advertising, and that's not allowed. We can establish dimensional controls for the wall sign portion of it. Again, we are not proposing any council review or approval, because at the end of the day, review of art is subjective. What is art in one person's eye can be garbage in another person's eye. So we do not want to restrict that. We do not want to have some kind of a city council or board review for murals if we go that route. So it's still going to be a ministerial permit function, come through city's community services department, who usually reviews our sign permit, and they will issue the permit for the mural or the wall sign. The direction, and I'm not going to go into this one because this was not an option that anyone really liked. The other discussion point was the locational consideration, whether we wanted to allow it throughout the city with no limitations, maybe within just the commercial areas, or start small, which is start within the station area, maybe the entertainment overlay district, major commercial corridors or roadways, master plan neighborhoods, arts district, and definitely exclude single-family residential neighborhoods. So there were some locational considerations that we also wanted to get council feedback on. So given the information and the discussion we had last Tuesday, this is the direction we received. City Council favored a combination of option 1 and 2. They do like the artistic kind of Instagram-worthy images within the city, where people will be attracted to certain locations based on the murals or the things that, surrounding towns are going to be talking about. However, there was also a desire to allow the business to advertise a portion of their content as part of that mural. So as the second bullet point said, mainly artistic with limited business content. Size restriction for the business-related content, not to circumvent the city's wall sign, and allow within all commercial areas throughout the city, exclude residential areas such as single-family attached, duplex, townhomes. So not just single-family detached, but single-family attached, townhomes, duplex, all the residential components. However, maybe include the multifamily products because they might have a room for parking structures that might benefit from aesthetic improvements or mural applications that we have seen in other places. No city council or art and culture committee review once the mural ordinance is approved, only permit review through community services team. The other direction we received from city council was to bring this to the art and culture committee and receive their feedback. As of tonight, we already had a discussion with the art and culture subcommittee, and they gave us some feedback, which is one of the idea was that we're not very comfortable with opening it citywide on all commercial areas. They want to start small, maybe designate it within the art and culture committee or art and culture district within the city, and then if the program is successful, expand it in future. That was one thought. They do like the idea of doing the combination of option 1 and option 2, allow limited business content. One idea was following Orlando ordinance, which is 5% of the mural can be business content, but some kind of size restriction for the business portion of the mural. So that's where we are right now. In terms of next steps, our task is to, with the feedback we received from the Art and Culture Committee, work with the City Attorney's Office to come up with the ordinance format where it can address some of the caveats or concerns that we have experienced over studying case law as well as studying other cities' ordinances, and bring that back to City Council for consideration. So that's all I have for the mural section. I wanted the Planning and Zoning Commission to give a review as well as give us some feedback.
So let's say the mural is sexually explicit. Where does that kind of review step in? I don't see any review at all. Like, what are the standards?
It's one of those things, it's a calculated risk. If we are considering murals, or if we are considering artistic expression, there are things that are protected under freedom of speech or First Amendment rights. So we cannot subject artistic expression or murals, for that matter, under a review based on content, because what you just described would be reviewing the mural based on content.
But couldn't it also be in conflict with an obscenity rule within the city or something? I mean, does this completely trump every other?
You mean like nuisance?
There's no, like, did you just put something up that was just
like a
completely-
nuisance, like graffiti.
Or just like I say, the clearest in my mind would be something completely sexually explicit. Typically, I mean, just simply would not be something that the city would want to have. Are you saying you could either?
Those will be protected under our existing nuisance as well as the laws that protect the type of content you are referring to.
So there are.
So there are currently,
fallback?
yes, there are currently
And
in
what
our
is the
code of.
process for those to kick in? Do the citizens have to, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, when do they kick in? Who looks at those?
Ideally, and again, we haven't done the full vetting yet on this. So this is just at a very initial stage where we received finally the direction from council that they want to do this. This is when the vetting starts with the city attorney's office as well as staff. So the first step would be if the process is to come and apply for a permit with the community services, that is the first step. Someone has to submit their proposal, if you will, and if it has limited business content, for example, we'll be reviewing the size of that. So that's like your first stop. It is not being proposed that once this ordinance is approved, from the following day, we'll see murals popping up on every building. We'll have certain limitations, and that's the first stage of the review. It starts with staff, And based on what we will receive in the proposal or the package, it will be reviewed under the full code of ordinances and not just the mural ordinance or not just the wall sign ordinances. So the codes that we are referring to under our code of ordinances, they will kick in. Yes, sir.
So I probably missed this because I wasn't on the committee when it came up the first time in 2019.
2020 and 2021.
Oh, maybe I was. What's the impetus for why we're talking about this?
There is a desire to have artistic expressions and murals within the city. So it's a council-directed and desired.
Okay. So to the best of your knowledge, it's city council says this is what they want input on and we're giving it to them? Because I'm trying to get a sense of, is this like?
Also, the Art and Culture Committee, I believe, it's not just the City Council, the Art and Culture Committee, which represents the artistic interest as well as the objectives and aspirations of the community, in my opinion. They are
Sure.
also very much on board with this.
Mhm. And I'm just trying to understand who is interested in this, because then that can help me understand what kind of how this ordinance is going to play out. If it's the business community over in the station area, well, that's a question on regulating business content. If it's a neighborhood that wants to put up a mural of all the kids who live in the neighborhood, that's a different way to regulate the content. So to provide that kind of input, it would be helpful to know what crew is out there wanting this, because then we can get feedback from them or things like that. So that's my only question is, who wants this so we know how better
So
to
it's
serve it?
City Council as well as the residents and businesses.
So we have murals now and they're not allowed, right?
Okay.
So we have to make them legal
Okay.
either way, and people are just putting them up all over our east side, which I'm fine with. But, there's no parameters, there's no check of the size of the sign.
Okay, and there's
So-
no rhyme or reason to who's doing it, it's everybody.
Right, anybody over,
Okay.
right now,
But the property
It's not
owner
legal.
is giving consent.
right. And they actually look great, if you've seen them. I'm not gonna say where they
I
are.
haven't seen them. Did
They're
you
not
guys happen to have
allowed.
any pictures of that? No?
So it's coming from
They're just kind of.
property owners. The Art and Culture Committee is certainly interested in seeing more artistic expression. Council has expressed an interest in that, but they're trying to weigh the risk and the reward of it. I think the tour we recently took included some art districts that had murals, and we didn't see anything that was horribly offensive. We do have some ability to regulate something that would be offensive. But there could be some things that were on the edge, and typically what we've seen in communities is when somebody has crossed a community's line, but it's legal, typically they hear from the citizens, and it gets handled pretty quickly that way. You can't, once you allow it, and that's one reason I think the Art and Culture Committee recommended, if you do go forward with it, doing it on a limited basis, where it would be like the station area and the entertainment district on the east side, and start there, and then see where that goes. But this has been a discussion
For years.
probably, Andy, it probably went back to 2018, 19 with the Art and Culture Committee.
Sure.
Just talking about this.
So do we have an ordinance now that basically doesn't allow you to have a mural?
Yeah, so it's not that it's prohibited, it's basically the way the ordinance is written. It does not allow murals because.
So that doesn't violate somebody's First Amendment rights if I'm a property owner?
No.
Okay, so our risk legally is that, we're fine if we don't allow anybody, but if you start allowing it, you can't regulate the content. That's the
Yes,
risk? Okay.
yes. Because if we go back, sorry, John.
No, you're right.
So if we go back, like I just had this wall sign definition in my back pocket on this slide, it's also defined as painted on. So technically that is a wall sign, and that's why the restriction is. Because murals are not gonna be limited to like 10% of the facade or 5% of the facade. It's usually like the whole portion of the wall. And tagging on to what John was referring to, I know Commissioner Jones, you missed the tour, the P&Z retreat we had at near Southside, as well as in Richardson. We can just, in stone throws distance, there are so many cities which are doing exemplary job of doing murals. It's always that balancing act, right? With zoning also, is the risk versus the reward. There is always gonna be risk associated with a certain regulation or allowing something. However, you also lose out on the opportunity of having exemplary art that can basically stand out. There are artworks throughout the United States where people actually make trips to go and see those artworks.
Any other questions, commissioners?
I was one question.
Yes, Jason.
So, I like the idea of just designating locations. So I guess just a question pertaining to the station area, the two locations you guys talked about. So the station area is all new construction, right? So primarily. So I guess someone would have to build a new building and then just say, hey, you know what, I want my wall.
Yeah.
So that'd be part of the.
When we were negotiating
Pretty
with a
much.
previous master developer, they were wanting to put in basically artistic spaces, right?
That's where my question was.
Yeah,
Have you guys ever had engagements with
Yeah,
developers?
and so we actually went
Oh, yeah.
to Houston and saw what they built in Houston, so we had a better understanding of what they were talking about, with like these little workspaces. There would be an artistic studio with the bottom floor, and they would live above it. But on the actual walls, they had murals that kind of connected and told the story, and we thought it was really cool. They were very, very much invested in the arts. We ended up not moving forward with them for a variety of reasons, but we really loved that concept of creating this place of expression. And that was kind of what also, we don't allow that now, so, if we're able to, if we come in here and make this level of investment, is this gonna be something that your community supports? And so we started having conversations with, the Art and Culture Committee was supported, we started having conversations with council and saying, we own a variety of properties, and if they were to acquire them, these are the kinds of things that they would suggest doing.
And we also kind of like the idea of Art and Culture Committee, the way they push back. We personally also prefer starting in a small geographic area or smaller versus opening it up citywide, because that also gives us that room to course correct and also see how the response is. Sometimes we panic too soon. It might be that once we approve the mural ordinance, we might not get a single request, or we might get maybe one request in a 2-year time period.
Has anything been put to the citizens of Farmers Branch regarding their input, or are they in favor of this? Have they expressed it previously to now, or do we know what the citizens generally feel?
The way I personally, as a professional, the way I receive that feedback is when I hear a direction from city council, who should have the pulse on their residents or their constituents. The way I get a feedback from the Art and Culture Committee, by the name itself, by their role itself, they are the proponents of art and culture in the town, in the city. So that's my direction as staff, that if I'm hearing from this group of bodies, then that is the community's vibe. But in a nutshell, to answer your question, no, we did not specifically send like newsletters or targeted communications to residents to ask their opinion, no.
Is that something you think that we should recommend that council consider?
I don't think it could hurt, at least.
So why don't you put that on the list? Planning and Zoning Commission recommends a survey or some way to get citizen feedback. All right, let's move on to A3, discussion regarding complete streets.
Thank you, Chairman Moore. This was actually a follow-up from our last Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, because there were some discussion, and there was a desire to learn more, as well as where we are in terms of the January joint session, like after the joint session, where we are right now. So with this presentation, my goal is to give a very basic primer, because again and again, it kind of makes me feel that there are some confusion in terms of what's the overall goal with this whole topic, or the idea is, and what we are trying to do here. So that's my one goal or objective with this presentation, to give a very basic primer on what we are talking about. And then moving forward, as a follow-up from the joint meeting on Saturday, January 22nd, what steps we are taking. So as you have seen in your packet, I made this presentation very light on text and content. It's mostly pictures and some nice little quotations that I borrowed from other publications. There's so much content on this on the websites that I have listed at the very end of this presentation that can take up like a full conference's worth of time. But I wanted to keep it very brief and touch on the key points. So for example, on this slide, I really like the way the author put it. The responsibility for establishing a congruent interface between private land development and the public right-of-way is often hidden within a regulatory twilight zone. Now, of course, you're gonna say, oh my gosh, but that's the nerdiest thing I have ever heard say it in terms of complete streets. So when we are talking about complete streets, we are not talking about one solution fits all. We are not talking about, okay, the street that I drive my vehicle on every day versus the home I live. Complete streets kind of tries to address that interaction. So when you are walking out of your door in the morning, besides getting into your vehicle, is there any other avenue left for you? Right now, probably isn't. So what we are trying to address from a planning policy standpoint is how can our cities be designed better where people have choices? What is a complete street? The term complete street encompasses street design practices collectively aimed at the safety, mobility, and accessibility needs of users of all ages and abilities. Some of you might have heard the term 8 to 80. The cities that are gonna be viable and livable for someone who is 8 years of age as well as 80 years of age. What does that mean? There are times in our life where we won't be able to drive. Are we designing our cities where if I am somehow by state law, my license is taken away because I can't see, would I still be able to move around? Would I still be able to function as an independent adult? I have a young kid. Well, does he always have to rely on me? I have a preteen or I have a teenager. Does he always have to rely on me to go from point A to point B? Can he just simply bike somewhere? He's trying to go to the park to meet with his friends. Why does he have to rely on me to put him in my back seat and take him to the park? So these simple concepts sound simple, but when we design roads, or the way we have been designing our roads traditionally over the past 20 years, we don't think about all these different users, all these different modes of transportation. And that's what this Complete Streets movement is trying to address. People want choices. This was a survey that was done by the National Transportation Institute. 66% of Americans want more transportation options, so they have the freedom to choose how to get where they need to go. 73% currently feel they have no choice but to drive as much as they do. 57% would like to spend less time in the car. And I'm gonna give you a personal kind of history or personal story. Of course, you can tell I did not grow up here. I come from a country where I didn't have to drive. I graduated college, and then I came here to do my master's. The first thing that really struck me going through the planning school here was how I first had to get a driver's license and actually buy a car before I could go anywhere, because I did not have the options. I did not have the choices. And City of Arlington, where my school is, for those of us who have studied public transportation, that's the largest city in the United States without any public transportation. So that's not just for people like us who are not used to, but also who have been here, grown up here, are asking for these choices. As city officials or city staff, are we giving them the choices? That's what we are trying to address through this question. Benefits of complete streets. There were so many benefits, I just picked up few. Older adults, by 2025, nearly 1 in 5 Americans will be 65 or older. About half of all non-drivers over the age of 65 would like to get out more often. Complete streets, better designed for other folks, driving and walking. Complete streets equals to staying active and involved in communities. For children, more than 1/3 of kids and teens are overweight or obese, and that's not just anecdotal. That's basically a factual data from the National Health Institute. Unhealthy weight gain brings high risk for prediabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure. Dedicated safe spaces for bicycling and walking help kids be active and gain independence. Being physically active helps kids learn and improve their mental health. Connect transit to work, to shops, to school, to home through appropriate planning and design for transit user. We are blessed to have DART service in our city. We are one of the lucky few who have a light rail station as well as a bus network. but do we fully utilize that? Create smooth, predictable transit trips by planning and designing for transit vehicles. Complete streets are ways to easier to take transit. People with disabilities, almost 1 in 5 Americans have some type of disability. Complete streets provide more attention to detail for travelers with disabilities. Complete streets can reduce isolation and dependence for people with mobility needs. And again, this Mitch Silverscoat, he's one of my favorite planning professionals in the world. And he said, young people do not want to work in office parks anymore. We are seeing this big change in this country. It's not political, it's more generational. This is where we need to think very differently, because if you don't, you will be left behind. What we are trying to say again with this picture is we have to give people choices. And that does not mean that we butcher all our existing road network and strip them down or make them more bicycle friendly or make them more landscaped or make them narrow or make them wide. It's not one design fits all. It's looking at your roadway network in a comprehensive fashion. So far, we have only designed roads for cars, and that's not a bad thing unless you are left in a situation where the gas prices are $5 per gallon and you are looking desperately for some other option. You want to go somewhere without your car. Is your city or your roadway network providing you that choice? Livability means being able to take your kids to school, go to work, see a doctor, drop by the grocery or post office, go out to dinner and a movie, and play with your kids at the park, all without having to get in your car. Now, I understand that's like a pie-in-the-sky dream. We'll probably never get there. But we need to start somewhere. And that's what this program or this change in thought process is what we are trying to do here. So in the last slide, in terms of resources, there's the websites listed. You can learn more and more. What I wanted to give another objective of this presentation is where we are right now. Right now, we are working on our comprehensive plan update. And one of the segments that we talked about, and we did an addendum to the RFP, is looking at complete streets policy. So we are just asking for consultants to look at our current road network and give us recommendations in terms of where some of these policies and practices might make sense. And it might not make sense all throughout the city. It might be they would recommend us maybe 2 corridors or maybe 1 corridor for that matter. But they will look at it in a holistic fashion. They will see where the light rail station is. They will see where the businesses are. They will see where the homes are. They will see how the trips are being made, how they're being connected, and where that last connection is lost, where you can get on a bus or get on a train, and once it drops you to your bus stop or once it drops it to your train station, how are you making that last connection? They will look at that. Once they do their study or their findings, they will provide that recommendation, and that recommendation can then be programmed into actual projects. So we are really at a very beginning step. It's a planning process, a policy-making process, and once that comprehensive planning process is done, and of course, we talked about resident participation. That's gonna be I don't know what the best term is. That's gonna be the best platform for citizen participation and input. That's where we will provide town hall meetings, website participation, surveys, stakeholder interviews. It would be a almost 18-month-long process, and the first half will be dedicated towards public input. We'll hear what residents want to say, and maybe they'll come back and tell me, Shrupa, you know what, we don't care. We are happy with the way we are, and we want to drive everywhere we want to go, and we'll take that. We'll take that feedback, and we'll put that in our plan. However, it's important to have that discussion, and that's the goal of this process and the goal of this policy. So I don't know whether I was able to give you the feedback you needed from the joint session as well as where we are.
Did you, am I correct? Was this presentation made at the last city council meeting?
No.
Okay,
No.
so this is just a follow-up to our joint
Joint
meeting
meeting,
that we
yes.
had. Got it.
Yes.
It's 18 months, right?
Well, the first half would be, yeah. Yes, sir.
So in hearing some of this, what was the feedback, help me refresh, what was the feedback on the people's desire for walkability and things like that on the I-35 vision study? Because I remember that was pretty high.
Very high.
Yeah, it's actually, if we go to our website, I don't have it on top of my head.
Yeah,
But the I-35 corridor vision study is posted on the website, as well as the feedback that we received through the surveys and stakeholder interviews was also posted. And actually, thank you for bringing it up, because one of the major feedback we got was, yes, they felt that there was the lack of connectivity between two parts of the city, given the corridor that's running through, and how to improve that connectivity, how to improve walkability, bike lanes. And another follow-up from that study, or actually it went at the same time, where we got funding from NCT COG to do interchange improvements for both Valley View as well as Bellwood under 35.
yeah.
And we are installing more pedestrian-friendly sidewalks, design improvements, lights, to improve that look and feel as well as walkability, connecting the east and the west, or the central and the west side of the city.
Yeah, because we even did that feedback period, I think, during COVID, when ain't nobody wanted to leave their house, and they still wanted walkability, and they still wanted bike lanes and things like that. And I feel like, you know, my wife picks up our kids from the school on a bike. I think it would be great if she had a bike lane rather than have to dodge cars every time she got my kids in the back. But I think that if we look at the vision study and how that went, I think that was really successful. And I think the feedback we got from there really encourages me that this is probably a really good idea, because we've kind of already done it once with the vision study, and that was the feedback there. And then living over on the west side, that it means a lot to me having that connectivity, that I could put my kids in that bike that I was talking about and take them to the park or the station area or things like that. So,
And I'm glad you brought up the pandemic, because I kind of saw it the other way around, which is during the pandemic, the need was even more.
Right,
to provide
exactly.
this connectivity where people could walk out, because we were going stark crazy at home. We wanted to go out, we wanted to have wider sidewalks and trails where we could go to park or just be outdoors or be socially distanced safely. So I feel that last year and a half showed us even more how important this is.
oh yeah.
So I know we did the business and that part of Valley View we talked about. Now, even before that though, I think I recall, and maybe I misunderstood, is that, and this is before I was even on this, but certainly here, because we talked about one of our field trips, is the Valley View improvements, whatever we do, widen the sidewalks. Is that actually approved, and where is the plan for that the public can go see? Because I don't know that we've seen it in any presentations. I can't find it on the website here.
I can actually probably forward you a presentation that Tina, former Director Fergus did at the Council Strategic Retreat. And this is where I don't know how to explain this. So that project is in the pipeline about the improvements on Valley View, which you probably saw some renderings last year or the year before.
Well, maybe it's part of the I-35 corridor project, but
No, it
maybe not.
was a project on its own, and as Mr. Cox would tell you, that was kind of going to be our pilot project. However, the way the planning and policy and programming works is, if we get funding through NCT COG, which is our Metropolitan Transportation Organization, and that means there are regional agencies throughout the United States that are responsible, that are kind of the distributing entity for federal dollars. And we have to fall into their transportation plan, their regional transportation plan. So it's not just us, they're looking at the whole network for the 16-county area, or the 12-county metro area. What happened with the Valley View project was, given that it wasn't programmed originally in their MTP, or their transportation plan, it wasn't shown with that design. So now we have to go back and kind of amend their TIP and include that new design or that new layout in their TIP. And it added some months to the project. However, with this policy or the goal we are looking at through this comprehensive plan, if we are doing, or as we are doing the deep dive on complete streets policy, if we come up with that comprehensive plan recommendation saying, okay, these are the corridors that are recommended by our land use plan, that we are gonna move forward with this kind of solutions or this kind of adjustments, they are the biggest proponent of complete streets in the region, given it also helps with air quality goals. And they have very stringent air quality goals to meet during those months in summer.
So the Valley View, so for
It's still in
complete
the
streets, it's not approved, and same thing with the I-35 corridor, the part we talked about on Valley View for that.
That
that's
one is
really not-
approved.
Okay.
That one is approved and funded, and TXDOT is already contracted with or the bid has already been selected. The Valley View project is kind of approved, but it's got pushed through the months because it has to be programmed in the MTP process.
I think it's 2026.
Yeah,
So it'll be designed later.
So the design hasn't happened yet because we don't have the funding for the engineering. And it's a short stretch, and then also Denton Drive. So if you're coming from Dallas North, you're on a 2-lane road, you get to Farmers Branch and it opens up to 4 lanes and it becomes this raceway, and then you get to Carrollton and it goes back to 2 lanes. And so if you look at the assets that we have on that short stretch in Farmers Branch, you have our historical park on Denton and Farmers Branch Lane, and we have Liberty Plaza, the Star Center, and the Grove, and the station area, and the restaurant park are all kind of right there, but then this is literally just a raceway. So there's an opportunity with the county who owns the road, and COG, and I think we have one other group that is participating
Yeah.
with little bits of money here and there to make that where it's a complete street, where it's designed to be walkable, it pushes the cars a little further in the center, so you feel safer on the outsides riding a bike or walking or pushing a stroller, and it kind of tends to slow down that traffic. And from a motorist standpoint, you're already on a 1-lane road each direction, and it just continues that way,
Stays the same.
going north up to Carroll.
We've got the one place on Denton Drive that goes down to that anyway, and it winds back.
And if you've ever tried, if you're at the Grove and you're trying to cross the street for the skating rink, during the holidays or the Star Center, man, you are sprinting to get across the street, because the cars really, the minute that those lanes open up, they just floor through there.
And I think another item that we sometimes forget is not only the design improvements, which sometimes can be cost prohibitive, we can also do simpler improvements which are not that costly, like crosswalk improvements or installation of pedestrian safety zones. That does not always mean a big chunk of dollar from a capital project standpoint.
Did you say when these proposals will be made for the complete streets, like,
For the comprehensive
yeah,
plan?
comprehensive plan?
So the comprehensive plan, we are currently reviewing the proposals that have been received, that have been submitted by the consultants. We are gonna interview the top 3 candidates, and we are also trying to give a presentation to city council, hopefully the next week, on where we are. I'm smiling because they just sprung that on me today. So we'll hopefully give them a presentation next week that where we are. The following council meeting, we're hoping to bring back the contract. I'm trying to put on a very strict timeline. That way we can get this project started and moving.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, so it'll be just like the I-35 corridor. As you guys know, the consultants take a year or however long they take to do all their stuff. They get feedback along the way, and then a year from the date the city council approves the funding for that contract, the city gets the report back as to what the recommendation is, and then city council talks about it for another 2 or 3 months before it's ever voted on. Historically, that's the way it looks from me, how
Yes,
it
yes.
works.
This body will be named as the steering committee for that. Once the consultant has been picked, then y'all will be the steering committee for that process, and it has a ton of community input. And that's
Yes.
a big part of doing a comp plan.
Yes.
That's what our role is, yeah.
Yes, and David, you're absolutely correct about the time. And this comprehensive plan would actually even be longer, given it's a much larger study. It's for the whole city, whereas the I-35 corridor was a corridor study, almost like a special area plan. The first, I would say, if we get a detailed schedule, we'll of course share. You will get all those information once the consultant is selected and we get a scope and schedule finalized. But that first portion of the study will be very intensive in terms of public input. And then they have to go back, kind of digest that input, come back, give us the feedback, and start towards writing the reports. There will be phases of different input levels, like the first draft, that would come probably after the first year of the study.
Gio?
The study that we're gonna hire a consultant for, are they gonna be responsible for developing traffic models? So,
No,
okay.
because that's gonna be the thoroughfare plan update. If the complete streets policy comes up with the recommendation, my goal would be to kind of give it to the public works and then take it to the thoroughfare plan update level.
So from a timeline perspective, when would that be happening?
You mean when the
Like,
thoroughfare plan
well, when
update?
the traffic modeling is gonna happen, when will we be collecting data on car counts across some of these major streets? The only reason I ask is because I think it's time sensitive with the fact you're about to have major highway construction that's gonna potentially skew some of the data that you get.
In a very,
We're getting a baseline now before.
Okay, so that was one of my questions,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I don't want the 35 job that's gonna essentially start pushing people onto our roads to start dictating that there's higher traffic counts happening in our streets.
The
when
mayor
reality
brought
it's
that up
probably
in
not
a
it.
previous meeting about the concerns with, we know we're gonna experience different, we did it when 635 was under construction, we saw very, very different traffic patterns. So we wanted to get a baseline count now before 35 is under
So
construction.
that's okay, you guys already get
That's
it, okay,
good.
good.
That's
That's been assigned to public
I
works.
just think that's gonna drive the data, and the data is gonna essentially
Yeah.
be a big key that we can present to the citizens, like, hey, this is what the traffic model is saying.
well, in a very kind of a nickel and dime standpoint, given that this is a planning study, and you know this better than I do, this study was not budgeted to do a full traffic count and do that kind of a traffic analysis. But as we are getting that done anyway through Public Works, I think if we are gonna get that data, so our consultant can use that data. Otherwise, that's why I was saying that it's not part of this study, this budget, because we did not budget for full traffic count.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we had that as a baseline before we started going down this path.
Okay. I have a written comment from a citizen, and we've pretty much covered everything, but I'm going to turn this in and make sure that you get it so it can go to the consultants. And any other citizen who wants to fill out one of these pieces of paper, they're downstairs. You can put your comments on it, and we'll make sure that it gets to the right people. Moving on to A4, discussion regarding the March 3rd, 2022 Planning and Zoning Commission retreat at near Southside Fort Worth.
We're starting to run a little short on time, so I'll try and make this short and sweet. But just want to kind of go back over what we saw, maybe discuss ways that we may think about kind of applying that in our own city here in Farmers Branch. We visited near Southside on March 3rd. Just kind of a quick overview. This is generally bounded by I-30, South Main, 8th Avenue, and Magnolia, with Rosedale being one of the major thoroughfares running through the middle of this. Some of the elements within the near South Side neighborhood were a heavy mixed-use presence within this. Also, we saw complete streets, which I know we have discussed fairly thoroughly, and also public-private interaction as far as partnerships, amenities, just kind of going back into that mixed-use idea. One thing I did want to touch on that was mentioned, and I just kind of wanted to show an example, was a then versus now of Rosedale Avenue, or Rosedale Street rather. At one point, it was 6+ lanes, and I don't know if any of y'all ever visited this. Growing up in Granbury, I was in this area for any sort of hospital visit or anything like that growing up, so I was familiar with the medical district, but it was not inviting. It was very cold, as you see there in that 2007 image. Unkempt vegetation, no imagination as far as the median goes. It was your standard 4-foot wide sidewalk. Really, you didn't want to be out there walking because while the speed limit was 35 miles per hour, no one was going 35. So we look at it now, this is the exact same spot, looking in the exact same direction. You do see wider sidewalks. We did, and it was discussed there, it was reduced down to 4 lanes in this instance. They do have some bulb outs to allow some more vegetation and street trees, wider sidewalks to allow for greater walkability, and also those bulb outs help slow down traffic. And then you also see improved lighting in the medians and also additional vegetation. So just kind of a reimagined and just more effort put into this to help make it a more inviting and walkable and pedestrian-friendly thoroughfare. One thing, or one big item that was discussed was reestablishing walkable urbanism. And while walkable urbanism may be kind of a newer term, the idea certainly isn't. The neighborhoods we were looking at were largely 100+ years old, and there's a reason it's reestablishing this and not just establishing it. We are talking about adding wider sidewalks, making storefronts that are more available for the pedestrian, where you can park your car in one place and walk around from place to place rather than having to get to your vehicle and drive from store to store. Also, we saw things like the linear park in the bottom right-hand corner, and then also improved storefronts and kind of repurposing old buildings. So all of this trying to drive a more, not just pedestrian friendly, but just more of a complete accessibility as far as vehicle accessibility or modes of transportation. There were parks and public spaces, again, enhancing the quality of life for those living, working in this environment. And I did want to show this as well. This is only a 5-year difference, and the cloudy skies, I will admit, makes it look a lot more dystopic than probably it would look on a sunny day. But nonetheless, you do see the lack of sidewalks on that image from 2017. And I do want to point out one of those. Yes, there's sidewalk here, but that we have now added sidewalk going down the street as well. So it's just, and then also on the right-hand side, obviously there was no sidewalk that has been added. So all of this helps create greater walkability within the near South Side neighborhood. So again, just kind of simple things that can be done to help make a neighborhood more inviting, more walkable, more pedestrian friendly. There was a great mix of different housing options. There was a neighborhood, not technically in near South Side, but just adjacent to, that was filled with old historic single-family homes. And I believe the quote we were told was the largest collection of historic American craftsmen in the United States. We also saw multiple townhome developments within this area, as well as large multifamily apartment buildings that had been added to this area to help give multiple living options, and also a pretty good mix of live-work options as well. On top of that, some of this has come about by way of creative conversions, where we've seen warehouses converted to allow living spaces, and also mixed-use options where storefronts were located on the bottom floor with apartment or condos located on the floors above those. We also saw creative open space. I point out that linear park. That was created by a public-private partnership with that multifamily building that was across the street from that. We've also seen kind of more commercial parks, like almost a food truck style park that was located that's there in that bottom left hand corner. And with that, that's on private property, and also is serving a public good as far as providing an area or a space where folks can picnic and can hang out with family, and offer also public art, as we see in the bottom right hand side. So it's just kind of a way to think creatively and outside the box as how we can maximize available open space. This could just be a grassy knoll that you see running along the street. Instead, we've turned it into an area where you can have picnics, you can have just spend time with your family, get out of the office, get out of your house, do things that are not just I guess, provide a enriched experience in this area versus just letting it go to waste as, say, a utility easement or something like that. There's also a balance of preservation and new construction. The building on the left, obviously, that's been there a minute. The one on the right is a new construction. There was a old warehouse or something like that that has now been replaced, and we did see kind of that balance of trying to hold on to the old and add a unique character to this neighborhood while also allowing new build within this, and kind of giving you a unique feel that you're probably not going to get really elsewhere, at least in this portion or this area of Fort Worth. So we did see that adaptive reuse of historic structures, as well as the addition of new structures, which all helps add that unique quality to it. On top of that, in the near south side neighborhood, we saw kind of the medical district. Again, that's a humongous economic anchor for them. But on top of that, there were also creative firms that we saw. We saw little mom and pop shops located throughout this, and just kind of all ways to, I guess these all provided opportunities for folks to both live in the neighborhood and work in the neighborhood in which they live. And because of the proximity, it allowed for quick and easy access. And then there's, again, it offers plenty to do around there where you don't have to go very far in order to get the items or the things you need in order to either for your own enjoyment or just, whether it's the grocery store or going out to a shop or going out to grab a bite to eat. You can do all of that within this kind of really confined area. So that was kind of a quick run through over what we saw there in the near south side area. But again, I know we are a little crunched for time, but if y'all do have any additional questions, feel free to fire away.
Thank you, sir. Questions? All right. We're 4 minutes from starting the meeting downstairs, so I'm going to recommend that we table A5 to the next meeting. That is review and discuss housing diversity in Farmers Branch. I think we need to give that a fair amount of time, more than 1 minute. And so if you all agree with that, then they will do that. And that leads us to A6, discuss agenda items for future planning and zoning commission consideration. In your hands is an ordinance that the city council passed at the last meeting that changes the way the attendance is handled for all boards and commissions. As you remember, we used to keep track, we didn't, but the city kept track through an attendance matrix, and every meeting we would review that attendance matrix and either approve or not approve absences. Our process, because we're meeting every 2 weeks, was probably similar to council's. It's very formalized. But as you get on committees and commissions that don't meet as often as we do, maybe they only meet 4 times a year, the process was less formalized. And so at one of the luncheons of the board chairs with the mayor, I guess the last 2, this has been a topic of discussion of how, if you're a small committee, how do you, and maybe a member's not showing up half the time, but you're approving their absences, then, how do you manage that? So city council took that and put some clarity around that, kind of taking that out of our hands to a degree and putting it on staff to monitor. And so it's pretty clear. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I don't need to read it to you. But basically what it means for us is we would have those 2 standard things where we approve the minutes and then we approve the attendance matrix. We no longer are approving attendance matrices, and so this is the ordinance that directs that.
So, David, if I may just add a little bit to that. The way, in a nutshell, what it's saying is if you miss in a calendar year 25% of the scheduled meetings, or the meetings that happen in that calendar year, then you are automatically considered to be off the board by city council, and then the next appointment will happen. And there is no concept of excused versus unexcused absences anymore. And given that this ordinance is not retroactive, so it's starting from tonight, to give you a very broad idea, I asked Brian to kind of call how many meetings we had over the past 3 years. On an average, we had about 16 meetings a year. So 25% would be 4. So say at the beginning of the year, you miss all 4 meetings. It'll technically, once we inform the city secretary's office, it'll technically take you off the board. However, if you miss like 1 meeting and then you go through all the rest of the year and maybe miss another one, you were good.
And all the meetings I've been in, I think the spirit of this is that if you agree to be on a commission or board, you should do your best to attend. If you realize, oh my gosh, my job's in the way, or kids or whatever, and you can't attend, then you're responsible and you remove yourself and not rely on the city to remove you. Sometimes that hasn't been the case, not necessarily here, and so that's kind of how they're deciding to manage that. So with that, I will close the study session at 6:59 p.m. I think we'll race downstairs and try to get started there. Welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for Monday, March 28, 2022. It is 7:07 p.m. and I'm calling the meeting to order. Thank you all for being here tonight. I'm going to quickly just give you a quick review of the study session. We normally don't do this, but just to clear up any confusion, we did have a presentation from the city regarding complete streets. It is a PowerPoint presentation that I'm sure it's public information, so you can get a copy of that. We are at the very beginning process of probably what's going to be a multi-year project. And so the city hasn't even hired a consultant yet to do the work. And so typically the process is that if council decides that they want to do that, then they will fund hiring a consultant. They'll give the consultant a scope of work. The consultant will go away and work for what feels like a year, whether it's a year or not. And during that time, they get citizen input and they talk to people and they create ideas, and then they go back and make adjustments, and then they get some more citizen input and so on and so forth. And then at the end, they present a beautiful plan and everyone punches holes in it. And then council decides if they want to adopt that plan or not. And then once it's adopted, then it's implemented. And so there's no implementation conversations going on. There were none in our study session meeting. There's also no presentation on tonight's meeting. So I appreciate those of you who have signed up. If you would like to speak on a topic that's not on tonight's agenda, which the only topic that's on tonight's agenda is approval of our last meeting minutes. So every other topic is an open thing. If you would just fill out one of the forms back over here to my right and bring it up, I will make sure that you get your 3 minutes. So with that, we will start with item B, citizen comments. This agenda item provides an opportunity for citizens to address the Planning and Zoning Commission on any matter that is not posted on the agenda. Anyone wishing to address the commission should complete a citizen comments registration form and submit it to the chairman. This says prior to the start of the meeting. I will allow you to continue to bring them up as long as the citizen comments go on. This agenda item provides the opportunity for you to speak. Anyone wishing to address the commission should complete a citizen's comment form, submit it to the chairman. There's a 3-minute time limit for each citizen to speak, with a reasonable limitation on speakers on one topic or item, with a minimum of 15 total minutes on the same topic item. Anyone wishing to speak shall be courteous and cordial. The Planning and Zoning Commission is not permitted to take action on any subject raised by a speaker during citizen comments. However, the Planning and Zoning Commission may have the item placed on a future agenda for action, refer the item to the Director of Planning for further study or action, briefly state existing city policy, or provide a brief statement of factual information in response to the inquiry. So with that, we will start the citizen comments, and Vicki Harrison is first. And if everyone will state your name and address for the record, that's how we start, and then jump right in.
Got it. Thank you. Vicki Harrison, 3706 Ridge Oak Way. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. I'd also like to inquire, I'm aware that someone was allowed to read a statement before one of your meetings, and I was wondering, I know you can't answer a question, if that opportunity will be afforded to other people in the future. I'm very grateful that you've mentioned, as well as other people have mentioned, that there be town halls. We don't have those anymore. I think it's very important that there's more input on everything you and everyone else in the city does. There are 3 things relevant to this topic I feel that I wanted to point out to you. In the near future, the Vitruvian Road is going to be cut through. Dallas College expansion is happening. That's going to be cut through. And the Presidian project at Saltgrass is going to be cut through. And all of that traffic will concentrate around where the fire station is. So There have been no citizen meetings on it, no information. You have been unwilling to be, or don't have environmental impact statements, traffic studies by independent people, but it's already gridlocked there. So I'd like to know what the plan is to make it livable, and then you talk further about narrowing Valley View. So our neighborhoods in that general area are being cut off. Already, we sometimes can't get in and out of the neighborhood and get to our streets in the mornings and the afternoons. So I've not heard anything whatsoever from anyone about considerations of that. And recently, when I was in touch with people at Cambridge Crossing, they had no idea that road was coming. So you're not keeping people in that area informed whatsoever. And I'd like to know what the study is on what the impact will be on response from the fire station when all of that traffic consumes that area. We've asked for answers. There are none, because really it is already overwhelmed. And furthermore, you talk about people the traffic being able to move. Well, the mayor served on the dartboard. They chose to shut down the east-west traffic of buses. The buses were a very viable alternative and would produce less emissions than individual cars, and that no longer exists. So that way to navigate from the east side to the west side, that's been eliminated by bus service, which has further exacerbated the traffic problems. So it seems unfair that our neighborhood seems to be targeted for some of this new ideas in terms of making the city, the travel better, and I don't have time to finish my point. So maybe I'll come again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will address the town halls. We did have town halls set up prior to the pandemic, and then as you guys may recall, we were closed down for about 15 months because of the pandemic, which eliminated all town halls. I believe there may have been some town halls since then. I don't know for sure. This group does not set up town hall meetings. Your city council person does that, or you can talk to city staff, but we will certainly pass that information on to the appropriate people to make sure that they are aware that there's a desire for more town halls. Harold Freilich.
Thank you, David. My name is Harold Freilich. I live at 13831 Braemar Drive in Farmers Branch. What I'd like to visit with tonight is what I have heard is basically rumor and innuendo about a street narrowing program, for one, in this housing diversity. The rumors that I've heard speak to really nothing specific. And I think the people that are talking about it out in the neighborhoods need some clarification and some leadership, maybe from planning and zoning or the council itself. But let me say this just basically about a street narrowing program. I think that would be hugely expensive. A thought I had years ago was about water runoff, just for example. You narrow a street, what's going to happen when we get a 6-inch rain in 30 minutes? We're going to have flooded intersections. So what does that mean? You're going to have to build bigger underground storm sewers. All that storm water runs into the 3 creeks here in the city of Farmers Branch. Rather than narrowing streets, why don't we have environmental programs for the 3 creeks? Work on the drainage, work on the beautifications, increase the property values of those houses that back up to the 3 creeks. 2 or 3 years ago, we had a huge disaster down here on Farmers Branch Creek. Cost the city about $1.2 million, as I recall. Well, that came out of the emergency fund, but the point is there's things that could be done on those 3 creeks rather than spend the money on narrowing a street. Think about the cost of doing something like that. Secondly, this housing diversity program, I was involved somewhat extensively on the build demo rebuild program years ago. We did not really start that program. We copied a program that started over here in Branch Crossing back in the 1990s, just brought it forward, added to it, sort of embellished it, and now we probably have, I don't know, 100, 150 homes. I wish what you guys do when you talk about housing diversity is go back 10 or 12 years with the help of the staff. They have all the information. They have the notes. They have the consulting reports that we did. They talk about every neighborhood in the city and plan when we should go into each neighborhood and look at purchasing homes in those neighborhoods. There's a lot of history. Some of you weren't even here in this town. Before you start making decisions about housing diversity, whatever that means, educate yourself on where we were 15 years ago and where we've gotten to today. I think it will really open your eyes. That's all I really have to say. I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys sitting up here. Pay attention, dig into the details, make the staff help you get these details, go back and educate you. It's their job. Thanks.
Thank you, Harold. Donald or David Silver? Is it David?
David.
Okay.
They kicked me out of medical school. My handwriting was so bad. David Silver, 2879 Millwood Circle. 2 points. The accessory building concept, I don't know much about it, but I cannot find anything good in that process. Second thing, what has been termed the road diet, what Harold just discussed. I'm going to throw an idea out. I have no idea if it's been discussed in your sessions or not, but rather than spending the money, if this road diet project comes to fruition, on tearing the streets up and rebuilding them in a more narrow manner, you take the outside lanes, you put up the concrete barriers, okay? It's a temporary, kind of permanent situation. It does multiple things, and I'm just going to name 3. Number 1, it allows the people walking on the sidewalks to have more security because they're not going to be run over. 2, it makes an automatic bike lane, no cost. And 3, in a lot of instances, because I've seen and heard this before, it will allow the people coming off the side streets onto the major roadways to be able to see oncoming traffic. We have a lot of homes that have overgrown shrubbery, sometimes fencing, which is a different issue, but things that are impeding the line of eyesight for oncoming traffic. And I think that those 3 things would allow a decent concept for this road diet process. Thank you for your time, and good luck.
Thank you, David. So just so everyone is on the same page, I have 2 more speakers. That's about 6 minutes. That's how much time you have if you want to fill one out and come speak. After that, I'm going to close the session and we'll move on. David Prince. Yes.
No, your mic. Wasn't sure.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
Okay, thanks. My name's David Prince with Eagle Gun Range at 14400 Midway Road. Council was good enough to let me come into this city and start a new business, and I appreciate it. One of the topics, again, I'm working out a little bit of ignorance, but thank you for letting us know there'll be PowerPoints and other presentations on it coming up. So I promise to get more informed, but the information I have right now is they plan on taking some of the lanes away from Midway Road. And as I said, I'm on Midway Road, and I paid a premium for that land and that building for one reason: traffic flow. And you are talking about taking that traffic flow away. And I would like to encourage you to reconsider this proposal, or at least really look into it. The other thing I suggested to the City Council when I showed up here was hope you would treat it like an SUP and get citizens' inputs and businesses' inputs along directly from them versus just a town hall. I think would go a long way for the businesses that have invested their livelihoods into that Midway Road area. Taking it down, and don't forget as well, is that Addison is adding a lane there on Midway. So they're going to go from 6 to 7, and from the rudimentary plans I've heard from, the city and some other places, you're planning on taking it 8 to 6 maybe. So you're going to have a pretty good disparity in lane movement. And then it's all going to culminate right there at Green Hill School. So I'd like to encourage you to continue looking into the facts, and I just don't see much benefit to reducing the lanes. I mean, I travel up and down Midway a lot, and some of the prettiest area of Midway is those areas that y'all plan on taking lanes out of. And I'm going, add some more flowers in the middle. Do something if you're looking at beautification. So anyway, you have a lot of people that are commuting. You've got the working class that's going up and down that highway that's wanting to get home to their families. And you start pinching it down, it's going to make them get home later. And these people are just trying to make a living. And let them get home faster and just leave the lanes where they are if you would. I forgot to tell you, I want to thank you all for volunteering your time to make Farmers Branch a better place to live and work. And we've enjoyed our 3 or 4 years here. That's all I had to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, David. And Cheryl Howerton.
Good evening. My name is Cheryl Howerton. I live at 3657 Morningstar Circle in the city. Most of my comments have been addressed by previous people about the congestion, but I do have some questions while we're considering this. This traffic study that's being done, is it a 4-season traffic study? Traffic patterns are different at different times of the year, and especially since a lot of places haven't opened up completely. And then this street diet, I guess I have other questions. Are you looking at making some one-way or making some two-way? Are you looking at reverse parking like Arlington has? Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad, especially when someone's barreling down the street the wrong direction. With this street diet, what about the drainage, permeability? We keep overbuilding our city. Where is that water going to go, like was previously discussed? And the existing neighborhoods, what about the sidewalks that aren't there now? I know I have sidewalks. I wish I really didn't have sidewalks because I admire the people, especially on some of the streets like Randy Lane, who don't have the sidewalks. They've got nice yards and they have less grass, less concrete to edge. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, I will close citizen comments, and we will move on to regular agenda items. Item C1, consider approval of the February 28th, 2022 Planning and Zoning Commission minutes and take appropriate action. Commissioners have reviewed the minutes. There were no changes, so I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, before we proceed,
Yes.
as a point of order, I wasn't at that meeting, so I'll need to abstain from approving it because I didn't do the homework and watch the video.
Thank you, Andy. I will still receive a motion.
And I'll move to approve. I can still do that.
I have a motion from Andy to approve the minutes.
I second.
Second from Bonnie. All in favor? It is unanimous. With that, I do want to thank everyone for showing up. I know this occurs about once every 6 months or so. Citizen comments is on every single agenda, and we meet twice a month. So if you want to come every meeting, every 2 weeks, come on in, fill out a form, and we'll give you a chance to speak for your 3 minutes. So thank you so much for your input. This will go to the consultants that have not yet been hired, and we'll make sure that it gets to your city council people, et cetera. So with that, I will adjourn this meeting at 7:26 p.m.